It's 5:30, time to call the meeting to order. Would you please stand as we repeat the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank all of you for coming out in the cold and windy weather this evening to be here. We appreciate you being here, and I hope you get some enjoyment out of this. So we're ready to start. Gentlemen, have you had a chance to look at the agenda? Do you have any questions or concerns about it?
No.
Okay, do I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
I make a motion we adopt the agenda as presented.
Second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. The item number 2, common consent agenda. Here again, have you had a chance to look at A, B, and C? And do you have any questions concerning any of those items that you'd like to?
I make a motion that we adopt the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Number 3, items for commission action. A, consider request from Main Street. 1, close the 200 block of North Penn from 4:30 p.m. to 8 p.m. on May 2nd, August the 1st, September the 5th, and to close the 300 block of North Penn on June 6th for First Thursday, June 7th, July 5th, and August 2nd for First Thursday. And then item 2 under that, authorize hanging baskets in the downtown area. Tabitha, how are you today?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
First of all, I want to thank you guys for your continued support of Main Street. We really appreciate it. So as we were doing, we want to do the first Thursdays again this summer, starting in May, and they went over really well last summer. We brought in 2 regular food trucks, like the barbecue, and then we did a taco, and then the kettle corn truck came in, and then we had some live entertainment on the corner of Penn and Myrtle. We had a couple praise bands, and then some local musicians played. We blocked off that block, set up some picnic tables, and just had like a family. Some of the stores stayed open late. We invited artists and some vendors to set up on the sidewalk, and the farmers market. And this year we're not going to ask to block off the normal spot for the farmers market, only because last year in the evenings it was pretty hot over there on Myrtle in their normal position. So we want to put them on Penn in the parking stalls on the west side. So it's already going to be blocked off, and we thought we'd just set them up there so they get some shade instead of, they were pretty hot in July and August of last year. We are not asking to block off in July because that is the 4th of July. The first Thursday falls on that, so we will skip that month. And then in June, we kind of collaborated with the Eclectics Gallery. They want to hold a second birthday party, and they wanted to block off on a Saturday. And she sat down with Lisa and I at the chamber, and we kind of discouraged that just because that's Saturday mornings in the summer is a busy time on that 300 block. And so they're going to work with us if we get permission and do that birthday party on June 7th. And we said we could move our first Thursday to the 300 block that month. So that is the reason to move June to the 300 block.
Okay.
So the farmer market is just for the first Thursday. This is totally separate from the regular farmer's market?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I had a chance to attend one or two of these events, and I encourage all of the community, if you're in town and you're looking for something to do, it's a fun event. There's food out there, there was entertainment, and there was a good crowd out there on the 2 times my wife and I were in attendance, and it's a good time to get together and see people that you haven't seen for a while and kind of enjoy the festivities. It's a good,
nice little
good
block
event.
party.
Yeah, it is. It really is. It really is. Erie?
Looks great.
Okay. Hanging baskets. I understand you have a hanging basket.
We do.
Show us.
This is the hanging basket. This will be the actual one of the baskets that we want to hang downtown in we're going to start in the 200 block. Just because to follow the ADA rules, they need to be 80 inches. The bottom of this needs to be 80 inches, and so that's going to be really high for us to water them. And so we have a committee put together that will take care of watering them all spring and summer. So we want to make sure that we can keep those alive before we spend money on all 3 blocks of that. And then we eventually want to do some on Main too. So they will look like this. We have visited with Mark at Ironworks, and he has made a bracket to put on there. So we would need the city's help with using their banding tool to get the brackets up there. So each pole, there's 2 on each side, would have 2 baskets, 1 on each side of it. So there'll be 8 baskets altogether in the 200 block.
What were you going to hang the baskets from? They were attaching to the light poles or where?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. The black
Okay.
ones down there.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
One on the east side, one on the west side of each pole?
Yes. No.
Or north and south?
North and south.
Yeah.
North and
We
south.
didn't want them hanging over vehicles
Okay.
when they pull up there, so we're going to do them north and south.
Okay.
So that is adjustable on the height.
Yes,
Yeah.
these in here. Melissa rigged it for me. We were going through Winkleman's to do all of our flowers and stuff and the baskets, so we're doing all local stuff. But yeah, here's the chains, and so they're adjustable.
Yeah, I wasn't clear in the information, or I overlooked it if it was from the awnings or closer to the building, but out on the poles, that'll be able to work with any
Yeah.
obstruction, a lot more visible too. That'd
Yeah.
look nice.
And these are, these have been in here for a week, but they'll get bigger and bloom, and they'll be hopefully really beautiful. But it's going to take a lot of commitment in watering. Even getting a big enough bucket. In some places don't have a place to put the water, get the water in them. So Community National Bank has an outside spigot, and so they have agreed to let us fill up there too. So our biggest concern is just getting some, because you're gonna have to get a ladder out and water those and stuff. So we're hoping we can come up with a tool that'll do it, but we have a committee that has agreed to do the 200 block this year. So, and then we'll hopefully be adding the 1 and 300 next year if it goes good this year. So.
Are you thinking daily watering?
Yes, and in late July and August, twice a day.
Yeah.
So,
We tried these when I was on city commission in a previous city, and we could not keep them alive.
yes. Well, we
Got
have
watered constantly.
Mr. Hayward and Rhonda are spearheading this, and so you know how their flowers are beautiful, and so
Yeah.
hopefully they will stay alive and beautiful. So.
Okay, great.
Sounds fantastic.
Great. All right, gentlemen, any other questions?
No.
Gary? No?
All right, thank you.
Tabitha, thank you very much. All right. Do I have a motion?
You want to do them both as one motion?
Yes.
Okay. I move to authorize adopting a resolution allowing Main Street to close the 200 block of North Penn from 4:30 p.m. to 8 p.m. on May 2nd, August 1st, September 5th, and to close the 300 block of North Penn on June 6th for First Thursday. And number 2, I move to authorize Main Street to place hanging baskets downtown.
Okay, do I have a second?
I second
All
both
in-
motions.
All in favor signify by saying aye on both motions.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion's carried. Okay, item B. Consider ADA improvements to the baseball complex. Dave?
Mayor, would you like to hear from the Rec Commission first as to what they are doing down there? And then that would probably help us lead into the other discussion. Would that be better?
Yes.
Probably. I have Brent, Nick, and Chrissy from the Rec Board here, so I will let them speak.
Hello,
Hey.
Aye.
I'm Brent Julian. I'm the Director of Recreation. I do have my sports guy here, Nick McBride, and then also our President of our board, Christy Mavers, is with us. We just wanted to discuss a little bit about, there it is, some future plans and kind of our 5-year plan down there to kind of tell you guys what our commitment is to Park Street. I know the ADA has been needed down there for quite some times, but it's also not something that's cheap or easy. So we just wanted to kind of tell you our overall plan down there, so we would get more of an idea where that we're committed to Park Street, and we definitely want to stay on Park Street and everything with it. One of those things we've done, and the main part of our 5-year plan, what you're seeing up there right now is a soccer ball, obviously, and us moving our soccer complex. We had the same issue out to where we were out on Peter Pan with the ADA compliance. We'd gotten some, just got notified out there that we'd been turned in out there as well. So we started looking at what we needed to do out there with the parking lots and getting the accessibility to the fields. And out there we just use porta potties and stuff like that. So we looked into the money we needed to tie in out on Peter Pan for our soccer complex, and we basically came to the realization that we don't really want to be out there. It's just not where we want to be. All we really have out there is pasture. We don't have the good playing fields. We have never done anything ADA compatible out there as far as our parking and all of that. So we got to looking at that and the accessibility of getting the kids there. That's probably our biggest complaint. The kids do not like to, the parents complain that kids can't ride bikes. Maybe that's not as used as much as it used to be, but the kids can't get to the facility as easy and all that kind of stuff. So what we did is we started looking into it, and our overall idea was we looked at the 2004 and 2007 master plan from the city, which we were part of that as well. Back then we had talked about developing basically the area between the skate park and where we are down on Park Street. Yeah, that's the original master plan for that, what we call 9 Acres Park. But could you go back to the other one, Kelly? What we would like to do is on ours, to the far left over there, you see where the skate park is, and then on the far right, you see where our current ballparks are. Our idea is we would like to renovate or just basically that into our soccer complex. Now, this isn't an overnight deal, and there's obviously a lot that needs to be involved in it. But we just feel like as a rec board, that's where we want to be. We would centrally locate basically all our facilities. The only thing we wouldn't have would be, of course, the bigger ball fields out on 10th Street where we still play. But everything else would be centrally located. The kids would have an easier time getting there, that type of thing. And it's something we'd like to push forward to. Now, I always use the term pie in the sky, and I get made fun of for being so old, but our pie in the sky is actually have get it all taken care of, have a bathroom, concession stand, and everything built. Now, that's probably down the road. Our first concern is just to get the fields in there, get the parking taken care of, and we go through that. That's all. This procedure here is what we're willing to take care of at City Rec. If you guys are willing to I know we haven't even really discussed this with Craig or whatever. We've had some discussions with Mr. Cowan and some of them as we're doing the ADA stuff. But that would be our idea and our commitment coming down to Park Street. In the meantime, the one Kelly showed you earlier with the parks that had their names on it, in the present time what we're going to do is we're putting our soccer fields inside our ball fields. So that's what we're doing this season and going on. We have actually moved on from out at Peter Pan already. The high school actually gave us a $25,000 donation towards our new soccer complex, and that's the start of it. But with that, we've already moved on from that facility this season for sure, because we're just gearing up right now for teams. We're going to have the fields down here. They do fit inside there. That's not perfectly to scale, but they do fit in there very nicely. And we'll already have the bathroom and the concession stand down there. So that takes care of our ADA problem, so to speak, so far, or at least we start addressing that as we begin to address it down on Park Street as well. And then, like I said, our future plan would be we would love to have that 9 acres over there between the skate park and this to basically turn into we're pretty much centrally located down there for all our recreational needs. And I know that was a lot and kind of jumbled around, so I'm more than willing to answer any questions. I guess the main thing I want to get across to the board is that our board and the City Rec is very much committed on Park Street. We feel like that's a great location for us, even though it obviously floods a little bit here and there. That's a great location for us, and we are committed to improving the facilities the best we can down there. And we also, the gray on the bottom is down there is the parking. That'll come up on the backside of Bicentennial as well, which is another issue down there, is we don't have enough parking all the time on Park Street. So we're hoping to make that parking lot down there where it'll be accessible to the Bicentennial side as well, which is that far south ball field. So,
Where's the division of responsibility between City Rec and the City of Independence on the property? Do we have interlocal agreements, or who owns what? I know you do the maintenance and
you guys
some
own
of the build.
You guys own it. We do the maintenance, basically, is where we're at. On the new complex, what we would ask, I guess, is just permission to have that area. And then once again, we'd be more than willing to do I mean, we'll do the build and all that. Now, I've also tried to talk a little bit with, is there a possibility, I mean, sure, we'd take your help as far as if you would be willing to help us try to clear it off or any of that type of stuff, like the removal of trees. I don't know how much you guys have been down in there, but I mean, they'll take a lot of take some leveling, obviously some removal of trees and that kind of stuff. So we would not turn down any help on that if the city has that ability to help us with that, or dirt work or something like that. But as far as the expenses or being ADA compliant there, we will build the code on that, and that would be on us. So
the other sketch where the soccer fields are out the outfield is immediate. You'll
that's
start that for
immediate.
the
We'll
next soccer
actually be,
season.
within a month, we'll be playing down there.
Okay. And
Yeah.
then this is your future dream, how, a year, 2, 5 years down the road, or?
We said 5 years just because, honestly, I mean, I don't know exactly, whether it's concrete or asphalt or which direction we go. I mean, also, we feel like we can build the concession and bathroom area for $125,000 to $150,000. These are all commitments we're willing to make, but we can't do it all tomorrow by any means.
Sure.
We have a little money set aside, but that's mainly right now. Like I said, we did get a $25,000 donation from the high school, and it will go into this project or wherever we end up, for sure, doing the new soccer complexes. But we have some money set aside right now. We've set aside approximately $5,000 on Park Street for each individual field. Obviously, with this ADA coming in and stuff, I mean, that takes care of the outside and getting them in the dugouts and that type of stuff. But the playing field itself is what we're willing to make the commitment on and try to upgrade them as well. I mean, so. But as far as, like I said, as far as who it falls upon, it would be the same sort of agreement, I would think. You guys still own the facility. We're not allowed to own a facility. We would just manage it.
So the construction of the fields and the buildings will be done by City Rec?
Correct.
You'll fund all of them?
Yes, sir.
And the old ball fields, you built the restrooms and the concession stands there also?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
That's what I was looking at, because with the obligation for ADA, both of us have responsibilities to meet. You have program issues too, and facilities, so that's what, looking at the existing fields, and this probably goes with David, we talked earlier about the ADA accessibility, and there was to be an audit done. Usually the process, you identify the deficiencies in a report. The transition plan is the implementation of the corrections and then the final action. So we kind of looking at where the break is. So your input would be program issues then, and the facility, if you built them, at what point does the city come to pay? Are you build them and then they become city property, or do they always remain in the Rec Commission's ownership?
I don't know how technical that gets. I mean, yeah, it would all. I mean, obviously we would like to continue to use the facility, but it would be the city's property. Like I said, the Rec Commission itself cannot own property. We cannot own property or build. I mean, so before, when we were out on Peter Pan, the high school has always owned that facility. And we just
Okay.
played soccer there, but we were in charge of maintaining it and doing the soccer. Same kind of, basically like we have currently right now with you on Park Street. It's your facility.
Okay.
It's, we just maintain and run our programs down there.
Is that in a interlocal agreement, or how's that handled, Jeff?
Park Street?
Yeah.
Before my time, I do not know.
I was gonna
Okay.
say, yeah. I've been here 18 years, but I mean, that's always just been
Yeah.
kind of the setup.
Well, I like the idea of the consolidation of all the activities in one area. I think that'll really be beneficial. I think what we need to do is also work on defining this relationship of ownership. If it's kind of like the Ash Center, or where that that line is, so we can look at liability and responsibility in the future. One of the things that I see with your parking lot, and then the issues with the ball fields and with this plan we've got, I think we need a master plan that shows everything. We need to identify specific deficiencies first in the existing fields, and then look at how we're addressing them so that we go in logical progression. You know, with your parking lot off of Sycamore Street, the connections dealing with ADA access to that field or connections, accessible route, you know, are we committed there to the other restrooms on Park for the Boulevard, the concession stand, how all this flows together. You know, we've started with the plan that we see with a little bit, but we haven't seen our total deficiencies in that area.
Okay.
You know, I think we're getting close to this season that maybe temporary solution for parking and access to then allow us to look at long term so that we can start working together for the complete master plan. There's so many advantages to utilizing that for your single complex. You know, somebody mentioned, well, you did, about bicycles. Oak Street,
Yeah, the
Peter
access-
Pan are not safe for the kids to ride there, where this central town, walking distance, bicycles, you know, it's all ideal.
Yeah. And Nick McBride, my sports guy, I mean, this is not by any means a professional drawing. Nick did very good with it. But I told him, you know, we kind of got together and started doing it, and just to even approach our board with it. And like I said, I'm very impressed with what Nick's done, but it's just basically, I mean, so these are by no means a master plan here or a drawing. We're just trying to kind of give you a visual of our overall idea too.
Yeah.
So.
Well, even if you look at a master plan, you've got the T-ball field. In developing this whole complex, is there a way to move some of those smaller fields to get better utilization of the ground and then make it more convenient? Well, there you go. More convenient, so ADA improvements will flow, parking will flow for both areas. You know, maybe where the T-ball field is extending some parking on that side to get it closer to your soccer fields too. But
Yeah, and we definitely will need to get in there, Leonard, and see what we can do. There is that, you know, there on the back side or the north side by the railroad tracks. We are concerned a little bit with the flooding and water that runs back there.
Right.
Because at one point, you know, we were thinking parking on both sides and stuff. So those are the little, you know, ins and outs we're not positive about. We're pretty sure we can attach the two facilities, if nothing else, by small walking bridges over that little small creek there and get back and forth. But as far as being able to come up on that north end, we're not sure about that yet. So like I said, it's very much in the planning area, you know, but it's something, and we're definitely willing to look at all sorts of layouts. And if we move forward with it, we'll obviously have to get some professional drawings and like you said, figure out where all the deficiencies are, and with ADA as well, and move forward with that. So, but we are very excited about to do this opportunity, and we just, I guess the overall thing we are committed to Park Street. We love Park Street. We want to be on Park Street, and I know the fields aren't always up to everybody's specifications, but I mean, you know, we're on a budget just like everybody else, but we are trying to allot money for the actual playing fields themselves. We're just not. We just don't expect, you know, come down and do the ADA stuff and leave the rest alone. I mean, we'll try to improve the ball field as well within reason and everything. And we got started on that last year too. We replaced all the fencing on most of the fields, including the Cal Ripken field there at the end. We replaced all the chain link fencing on it and stuff. So I mean, we've been making improvements down there anyway as well. So.
As far as that 9 acres of land that you're looking at, are there any issues with that land as far as what it was used for prior, many years back?
No, we had a Brownsville grant, and they did a phase 1, phase 2 environmental study before the city accepted that. So there's not any issues.
And no environmental concerns for that property?
No, and it was soon after that it was after the flood they developed, Doug Pickard actually developed this because we were going to get all those flood lots. And he had developed this as a possibility for that property, and then he actually recommended the soccer fields down on South 10th Street, and this drawing in some flood lots as well. And of course, that was never developed that way, but this was I think he did this in the beginning of 2008 after the 2007 flood. But yeah, there's not any concerns with that. We have had the environmental studies done, and so.
Okay. All right, sounds like an ambitious plan. Yeah.
Well, thank you guys very much for your time.
Thank you, Brent.
Thank you very much for your presentation.
Okay, back to my part. You guys are soon have to make a lot of decisions, and which Leonard knows. We do have a master plan for the ballparks. This just came up, so it's addition. So, we're going to come to you guys with a transition plan. You guys are the ultimate ones that, as Leonard knows, you can tackle ADA 100 different ways. So we're going to bring you our ideas, plans. Lacey's brand new. We haven't had a chance. We are close to our timelines of getting all of these projects, how we think we could afford, all of those questions that are going to come up as we go through this whole city transition plan. And you guys will have a lot of input. You're going to have ideas, changes, things like that. So this here, we gave you two options, really. I mean, Leonard, you talked to us a month ago about temporary, which may be the way you want to go so that you have a chance to look at everything, and you guys may want to tweak it or do something. We think that will cost us about $10,000 this year to get through the ball season. There's no way, I think, at this time we could even if we talked to Graham, get anything done for the season. I think we are behind the 8 ball. It's supposed to be a very wet spring, a lot of thunderstorms. I just don't think we can accomplish it. I think temporary is probably the way we need to do, work with the rec board, get through this season, let us get through the transition plan, let you guys finalize it. And that gives us then the book to follow moving forward.
Yeah, I'd like to see the audit before the transition plan,
Right.
where you identify the different issues that, you would go list each field and the parking area and establish where the issues are going to the field, accessible routes, the problems in the dugouts, so that we first identify all the non-compliant issues. Then the transition plan is where we take it to the next step of actually start grouping which are the primary concerns. And the thing, if we're going to look at a sports complex to include the soccer fields, I think this is really a good time to look at the deficiencies, but then refine the plan to get the best use of parking and routes, so that we can go in a progression and get the most out of our money. And if piggyback on Brent, are you looking at some fundraising for your soccer fields, or how?
No, we would just start budgeting it in. I mean, we're looking at probably on the major aspects of it, as far as the parking, and even if we did the concession stand, we're looking at a loan. We would be figuring on getting a loan to do that.
Is that for the existing lots too, for the ballpark, or just for the soccer field?
No, nothing we have to do on the baseball side will require us any sort of loan. Like I said, in the end of the plan, we need to get an exact number on parking and what and where we can put the parking and all that kind of stuff. So since we're still kind of kicking around what if numbers, we're looking at, we would need a loan for the parking, we figure, and the if we do a concession and restrooms over there. That's what we'd be getting a loan for, and that would be on the soccer side only. Which, again, where it's located, might still be useful for the T-ball parents and them to, you know, might be easier for them to go to that one as opposed to the one that's centrally located, the current one we have on Park Street. But I mean, but that would be the idea, is to build a permanent one up there.
Yeah, it seems like if we have the advantage to reevaluate the whole complex, you probably won't move the 3 fields, the one east of Park and Clark James, the one south of Clark James, Bicentennial Field. But to regroup and look at the advantage of relocating the bathrooms and the concession stand, because your seasons are different, aren't they?
Correct. We have a spring and a fall season for soccer, so it's actually used twice a year. But I mean, yeah, our initial thought is the soccer complex would be separate from the current ballpark complex.
Yeah, if you could joint use restrooms and concession stand, that could help some. But I think there's a lot of ideas that you could do with the development, that back to identifying our deficiencies, working for a master plan of the whole complex, and not just soccer fields, baseball, but the complex, to see where to go would be really a benefit for both programs and the community. There's so many ways to approach the project, and first identifying, since we've got existing facilities, we've got a little more leeway in how to address actual issues than we do on new construction.
So I guess I'd ask Leonard at this time just permission for us to be able to do temporary what we need to do to get through the ball season down there. And
do you have a need at all fields, or do you have a need for where, we haven't seen any of the complaints, so it would be beneficial to see if we had the audit to tie that to the complaints. Then are you looking at just Clark James Field, modifying, with parking and some walkways there, or do you have that issue at all the fields?
we don't have any complaints for South 10th Street. Our complaints are here. Basically, those 2 fields there are where our complaints are. Buddy Ball gets the Sinclair field. That's where most of those complaints came from. The other side has to do with wheelchair access, several elderly people for accessible routes, concession stand, bathroom, and seating.
Yeah. It helps when we have the audit to identify
Yeah.
and then start working from there.
Right.
And then,
Yeah.
For us to see the
That's
actual
coming
written
quick.
complaint.
We've got it.
Yeah.
So we'll get it to you.
Yeah. But, not a transitional plan, but you're identifying sidewalks, you're identifying parking
Yes.
conditions, and tie
Yes.
them to the reference.
Yeah. Yes, have that.
Okay.
Okay.
So the $10,000 that you're looking at to making some temporary corrections on this is what's pretty much specified here on this drawing?
Yeah, I mean, basically, we will work to make some accessible parking spaces and accessible routes up to, what's the one on the left?
One on the left, Clark James.
Clark James, just making sure we have accessible routes in there and to the dugout, and see what we have to do on the Sinclair side just to get accessible routes to the Buddy Ball. I think's in August.
Yeah, it'll be after
August. So whatever we need to do there to make sure we can get them to the dugouts and in, and a place to park.
Yeah, because that comes under, with program access, you can do some other options for concession stand or.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So what we'll get from you next time will be basically the complaints and an audit of what you're actually going to do.
Right.
at
Well,
this
what's
time.
going to happen, Mayor, is we're close to coming to you guys with all of that stuff. The whole proposed transition plan, the audits, the complaint, everything, so that you guys look at that. We've made suggestions of what we think are the fixes to that. You may have a different opinion or a different idea. It's not going to be an easy discussion. It's going to take time. We as staff sat and just kind of went through it, and what did we spend? Just 4 hours. And, you know, we were just looking at it. You're going to have questions. Leonard's going to have different ideas. You guys may have different ideas. It's going to be a process to go back, because ultimately you guys are the ones that approve it. And then that's our book that we use to, similar to what we're doing with the 2017, we have a transition plan. That's what we're following each year, that outlines what we're doing, that we did, you guys approved in August of 2017 from the settlement agreement. That's how we do the ADA every year. We are following that plan. So when I bring stuff to you, it's out of that plan. It specifically says what the projects are. So this ultimately, this combined, complete one will set the projects, and that's what we bring to you. Of course, the commission can change or move things around as you guys feel fit. It's your plan. You're our commissioners. You'll ultimately decide what the how we're going to fix it. I mean, I'm just here to provide you the resources, the information, the ideas, and ultimately you guys have to make the decision.
The 2017, is that the transitional plan that Trans Systems
Yes.
completed?
Yes.
And that was mainly downtown,
That just dealt with the settlement.
just downtown.
Has downtown, yeah, and the streets, curb ramps, stuff like that.
Yeah, I think it was primarily downtown.
Yeah.
I was looking through it.
Yes.
Uh,
But if you look in there, Leonard, it outlines each year what we're supposed to do. Like I think 2025 is the ravine. This year was the park playground. That's where we get. I just don't think these things up each year. That's where we get how we follow and present you guys ADA.
There were some things like with the ravine, and like I mentioned, program access.
Yeah.
You don't have to provide actual access down there if you comply with the program access through a video, through a place to observe, to have the same experience as somebody's there. Mm-hmm. So the cost can be less in that case than actual construction.
And that's why we bring these things to you guys, and ultimately you guys approve that, and you can make those adjustments or suggestions. It's also a time when the public can hear and see what the options are and give you guys feedback. And so
the ballparks on 10th Street, have those been audited yet or surveyed?
yes, we have it, and we have a master idea of what we're going to present to you. Those are a little bit better because there is somewhat old asphalt, it looks like, that they took off a road and put out there. We do have some parking there, but it's pretty much grass once you get up in there. It does have issues that will have to be addressed at some point.
But with the audits, a site plan or building plan to identify the point that you've surveyed,
Yeah.
to tie in the actual reference is really beneficial then years from
And see,
now,
I haven't taken
somebody
it that
else.
far.
Yeah.
I mean, we kind of we've looked at it, surveyed it, pictured it, went through and identified what the issues are, went back and developed a plan on what we think the costs are.
Yeah.
And when we sit down with you, Leonard, you may tell me, David, I need more information, or you need to go back and do this. I work with the DOJ, Great Plains, and all this, and but some of these things we may sit down and you guys say, hey, I need some more information, or David, we need these ideas. That's why I think it's going to take us time to go through the transition plan.
Well, what we did at the state hospitals, we divided for that. We looked at public access to a building and work environment. And we divided it into the groups that would be affected, and then we identified the items we needed to check.
Right.
So there was a checklist that we tied to a floor plan, and on some we actually keyed it with photographs of the deficiencies. So years later, you could always tie it back.
Right.
You always had that to prepare your transition plan, so you could refer back to that information, and you evaluated the degree,
Yeah.
so you could start picking out on existing facilities the
Right.
significant items that need to be done first and those that could be.
Yeah. Our huge
Right.
issue is the park, as you can probably imagine. There is just a lot of issues out there.
Yeah.
Other things are just,
Yeah.
but the park has a lot of things
Yeah.
for us to consider. And you may have a lot of different ideas but that's kind of the jewel of Independence too.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
public access is different in
Yeah.
two realms.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
it's going to be on you guys. I mean, I'm just the conduit bringing you guys all this information. That, as you know, Leonard, ultimately protects us from a complaint going forward once we get that in place. And but it's going to be a lot of work. A lot of work for you guys. A lot of tough decisions coming forward.
In some cases, the audit is better to have a consultant that, you as ADA coordinator, as a term coordinator,
Right.
you should be looking here, here, and there,
Yeah.
and not being an auditor.
Yeah.
Because
And
if
that's
you've
true.
experienced,
As you look at it, and that's why I spend so much time on the phone with the DOJ and all these other guys, and you give me suggestions and everything else. I mean, I'm not an expert on it.
well, that's where looking at a particular consultant to come in and do these audits, they're familiar, they can assemble it quicker, and then work with you to develop a plan instead of you starting
Right.
to get familiar. And it's more than just the actual regulations. There's a lot of conditions in the front that can affect an existing building and provide more latitude than strict conformance. So
Right. Yeah.
it is, as coordinator, I don't see the coordinator as the auditor, but the
No.
one that says, I've got this, and you get the expert that knows it, and they prepare the plan for you, and then they
Right.
put it together that you can
Yeah.
turn to a page and simply understand, or the next one after you can use the same book
Right.
to
Yeah.
get the plan.
Well,
But,
it's
yeah.
going to be in a nice book for you. I'm sure there's going to be things that you may ask me to do further, or we may need to. I don't know. We got some. You're pretty good at it, and but I mean, it's going to be a lot, and it's going to take. Mayor, it's going to take some work days, work sessions. Craig, I don't know if you have any more to add.
Well, that's what I was just going to say. We view this, as Dave said, it's going to take some time, so ideally, probably at one of the work sessions that we were talking about, or a special meeting, because it's going to take several hours. Like, say, staff, as when we went through it, it took us well over 4 hours. So we need to set aside that time with you to go through that.
Well, that's what the thing that where a consultant can come in and do the surveys and put the data together, then it doesn't take all the staff time to try and understand how to put the data together in a useful format that
And-
allows you, like you, ADA, you're director of EMS, code enforcement officer, you just can't do it
Yeah,
all.
you just kind of
So, the ADA is complicated enough.
And-
So why should you have to
Right.
learn all the ins and outs of ADA when we can hire a
Yeah.
consultant to put the book together and then sit down?
Right.
And, we did one for the courthouse. We used pictures that within 30 minutes, we hand it to them and all the data is there. You turn, you look, and
Right.
it's a tool that they could use where they didn't have to spend hours analyzing, and your time and the staff's time's better used somewhere else. And
This is about a
Doing an audit.
165-page document. It should, like I say, I got to spend some time with Lacey. We've got to get Lacey is here. Yeah. Yep, Lacey is here, and we built it over 20 years. and how we put that together, and put the final book together, and then get with Craig, and whether we just want to give you guys that book, let you look at it, and then you can give us feedback whether this is enough that we can sit down and start working on it, or you think we need some more expert, somebody else to give us some more guidance. I mean, we're open. I'm no expert at it. I wouldn't even. We're just trying to protect the city and do the best we can.
Okay.
So, as far as this audit, when do you plan coming back to the commission and presenting this? You have a timeline? Are you looking at 30 days out, 60 days out? Any idea?
Lacey. I mean, Lacey, I don't even know if we've showed it to you yet. Have
Well, what we could do it at the next special meeting,
Okay.
just have that on one of the agenda items, and that'll give you
one
time
of those
where
works.
you can talk, and we can.
We're
go over-
close. It's more of just building the timeline over the 20 years, and we're just kind of putting stuff in there. And those are things, even that part of it, as you know, changes as you guys make your decisions. So
Yeah.
we're close. We can put the book together, and what do you think, Craig? 30 days, probably, maybe April. I think.
Why don't we,
May-
at our next work session, discuss it, because make sure we're not going beyond what needs to be done.
Okay.
Yeah, we have, of course, the next work session is next week
Right.
at 9 a.m.
Right.
I can't remember if we had anything specific.
Yeah, the
Talk
county
about that.
commissioners were supposed to
Oh.
be there.
We heard back from them?
I sent an email to Charlotte on that, and she's not ever responded, but I'll get back with her
Yeah.
again.
I talked to Larry, and he said they were interested, so
Okay,
they were
so
just
she must
waiting.
have talked to him, but she hadn't got back with me, so I'll email her again.
Yeah. Why don't we just go over it then? 'Cause
Okay, I'll get the book
Yeah.
together and
I'm-
get with Lacey.
Won't you wait? Because I don't think you need 160 pages.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, I was going to
Well-
say, not next Wednesday, but the April one. But then we had the
April
April
one
one
was
is the special,
The forum thing.
it was
at
the
5:30.
forum on,
April 17th, I think it is.
right. So that work session's dealing with that, so I don't think we could come, I don't think we were ready for next Wednesday,
I
unless
think-
you want to put it.
What I'm saying is we need to talk. We don't need the book to look at.
Okay,
We just
Oh,
need to
yeah,
talk
okay, well,
about it.
sure.
okay. Yeah, oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Okay.
As far as the 2017 transitional plan that was developed by Transsystem, is there a link to that?
I can send it to you.
Okay.
We can make sure you get it.
Sure, that would be
Yep.
fine. I'd appreciate that.
Yep.
This is my first time
Yep.
having a chance to take a look at that.
I will email that to Craig in the morning and get it to you.
All right.
So I guess my question is this, go ahead and do the temporary then for now?
Yeah, that would be my opinion, to deal with the pressing issues,
Yep,
the temporary.
okay. All right.
Because that'd be basically building a base, and, the screenings
Yes.
for the top course would work
Right,
better, a
Yep.
lot smoother surface
Yes.
for wheelchairs.
okay.
Yeah.
We will do it. All right, thank
Okay.
you.
All right. We can move on to item C. Consider proclaiming April 2nd, 2019 as National Service Recognition Day. Kathy Shepard.
Good evening, I'm Kathy Shepard, and I'm the coordinator of RSVP for County, and I brought some volunteers here with me. I'm sorry a few of them had to go ahead and leave. Ever the volunteer, they were serving a community meal, so they left to go do that. I wanted to tell you, on National Service Recognition Day, thousands of local leaders take time to honor Senior Corps and AmeriCorps volunteers by participating in recognition events, issuing proclamations, and taking to social media in a nationwide show of appreciation. The 7th annual event will take place on Tuesday, April 2nd, 2019. Mayors and city leaders, county officials, tribal leaders, and elected leaders from across the country are increasing their use of national service to solve their community's toughest challenges. CNCS, the federal agency responsible for national service and volunteering in America, engages 300,000 AmeriCorps members and Senior Corps volunteers in national service at more than 50,000 locations each year. Through partnerships with faith-based organizations, nonprofits, and local agencies, national service members are embedded within the communities they serve, using their ingenuity and training to make a tangible, lasting impact. Locally, RSVP 4 County partners with 25 organizations in our service area, which are the 4 counties, and currently has 210 volunteers. Whether responding to natural disasters, tackling the opioid epidemic, supporting veterans and military families, helping with food pantries, repairing homes, serving community meals, or providing medical transportation to the most vulnerable, Senior Corps volunteers help local leaders make their communities stronger. I brought a sample of one of the things we're doing with the opioid epidemic. They are drug deactivation packets. One side gives statistics for the United States of how many people die each year from prescribed medications, and then the back side has the instructions of how you use these. These are great. Our volunteers have been giving these out and doing presentations. People can use them in their homes instead of having to do drug drop-offs. But that's one way. On April 2nd, we are actually going to have a project where we're going to collect items for our veterans that are in the VA hospital in Topeka. And on April 2nd, we'll be going to Topeka and delivering those. So we would encourage everybody to participate in that. And we would love for you all to sign the proclamation in honor of all of our volunteers, a few of which I still have with me.
All right. Thank you, Kathy.
Yes.
On the collecting of items, what items are you looking for?
Usually they like things like small-sized toiletries, white socks is a big one, white T-shirts, just the things like toothpaste and toothbrushes, deodorant, anything along that line will be much appreciated.
And these, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say, we're going to be getting this out to the community right away, and so we can start collecting in the next few weeks, and then I'll be taking it to Topeka on the 2nd.
Okay.
And this is a statewide project with all of our Senior Corps programs.
Great. Will there be a collection point for these where we could, citizens could drop these off?
We can have a drop-off point at 4 County, and then I was going to talk to Lisa Wilson, see if we can do it at the chamber, and maybe visit with Tabitha about Main Street, too.
Okay.
Okay?
All right, thank you. Thank you very much
Yes.
for volunteering in the community and providing all these services. The key word is volunteer. You're offering your time and your talent and your service to promote the welfare and the good of not only the community, but through various activities that you're involved in. I commend you for that, and I hope more people see and hear this and step up and volunteer to help you in the endeavors that you chose to work on for this coming year.
Thank you. One of the things I forgot to mention is on April the 10th, we're actually going to be bringing Steve Carr from the Attorney General's office here, and he will be talking about elder abuse and trying to protect yourself from scams, and he does an excellent presentation. I have heard him before, and it's well worth everybody coming to hear that also. It's the cost of the meal is $5, and the community is welcome. We'll have service providers, but just members from the community also participate.
Okay. And will that be an evening event, and where at?
It actually starts at 11:30. We eat
Okay.
lunch, and then the speaker will start at 12, and it'll be at 4 County in the meeting rooms, Patterson meeting rooms downstairs on the main facility, 3751 West Main.
And do you need to make a reservation ahead of time, or?
Yes, please.
Okay. Okay. All right, gentlemen. Anything else?
No.
All right.
Thank
Kathy,
you.
thank you very much.
Uh-huh.
Thank you all for attending. Right. Is the proclamation, is that normally read?
There's no requirement. If it's long, you can summarize. It's up to you, Mayor.
I think they did a good job of summarizing what the proclamation stood for. So let's move forward on that. It looks like a lengthy reading to me, and I'd have to get a little closer to see the words. So, do I have a motion?
I move to proclaim April 2nd, 2019 as National Service Recognition Day and authorize the mayor to sign the proclamation.
I'll second.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion carries. Item D, consider an ordinance repealing previous ordinances creating the Independence Downtown Art and Cultural Advisory Board.
There we had some terms that have been vacant on this, and I contacted one of the original members, and they said that they hadn't met for several years, and that he recommended that they dissolve the board because it's not active any longer.
Okay.
And so that's why we brought it to you.
Okay.
Yeah, I had a question of what the board actually did and visited with a couple members. One of them was Tim Emmert, and he kind of explained what the original concept was working, actually, as I said, to bring cultural events downtown, music or art, specialized, but said it kind of struggled. And I didn't know, looking at the different events at Main Street, the Chamber is trying to do the opportunity, if to change the structure, that we could get a diverse board, that we could have emphasis for, our Latino culture is increasing, the African American culture, and really look at bringing back some culture into the events could work with Main Street and Chamber for music or for art displays to kind of emphasize true diversity of Independence. I don't know if there's enough interest of people to go with that, to make it effective, but our activities downtown are really increasing. The first Thursday, the All Wheels Night, Chamber events, that we're trying to get people to come downtown. If you thought it would be worth trying to see if people would be interested in serving, do we restructure, or do you feel that it's served its purpose and there's other avenues to accomplish the same thing?
Well, in looking at this, maybe there would be a collaboration between Main Street, maybe get some community input from the Hispanic community and the African American community and the other ethnic groups in the city, and determine if they would have some interest in using the Main Street, their ability, because they're putting on different functions throughout the year in the downtown area, to see if maybe working with them, they could kind of piggyback and come up with an event they would like to see held. There's the Cinco de Mayo in May. There's a lot of other festivals that come up that are ethically related, but might be worth a try to see if there was interest in that, and then maybe team up with Main Street, an entity that we already have that could kind of help them do the legwork of that and incorporate that in some of the downtown activities that we're already doing now.
Hey,
Or
you
would
do
the
realize there's a diversity task force through the chamber that does some of this same
Well, that's
kind
what
of
I was
thing as well.
wondering too, then, if that could be a
So I don't know if
function of
maybe they
them
could
to.
work with the
Right,
Main Street, because then you would kind of have two, and I don't know.
yeah, 'cause it's kind of an odd committee for the city to have. So that might be the best with Diversity Task Force, to see if they could work a subcommittee or a group into that.
Yeah, Main Street and the chamber in a lot of areas are integrated to where they're doing a lot of the same functions. So maybe rather than a committee or commission like this, use the chamber and their diversity group to maybe incorporate some of it in, and go that direction. Gary?
I don't know enough about it to even comment, really. If it had a great purpose when we formed it in 2004. If it still has a great purpose, I'd love to keep it. But if it's basically defunct, I see no reason to keep it on the books. But again, I don't see any tremendous hurry to, repeal it right now if there's been support to keep it going. I haven't heard any such support, but.
Yeah, I kind of like Kelly's idea with the Diversity Task Force, and to emphasize the culture there. I know there was a dinner that they had scheduled with the different national foods. So
Yep.
that might be something that they could work more effectively than the city government and commission.
Yeah. I hate to see a city board sitting defunct myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it pretty well indicates they hadn't met in 4 to 6 years, and like I said, if we can use the Diversity Task Force to maybe integrate some of these cultural celebrations into the city, I think I myself would think that would be the way to go.
Mhm.
All right, so anything else on this? Okay, do I have a motion?
I move to approve an ordinance repealing previous ordinances creating the Independence Downtown Art and Cultural Advisory Board.
Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay, next item. Okay, item E, consider an ordinance to increase the miniature train, miniature golf, and building rental rates as recommended by the Park Board.
Do you have that ordinance number? I forgot to write it down in here. You
Yeah, I-
sent it to me yesterday.
4288.
What?
4288.
4288. Okay.
Barb is here. Do you have any questions?
Mayor, I have one question. I drafted this, and when you got the original recommendation, it increased, or recommended increasing the enclosed 4-H building from 70 per day to 100 per day. Then when I pulled the existing ordinance out to do the new ordinance, I noticed there's actually a fee for renting, like just the kitchen area of the enclosed building and then the open area. And there was no recommendation to raise those. They were already at $40 a day for each. So 40 and 40 is 80, and it was 70. Still going to be 40 and 40. I didn't know if you want to raise those two or not. I didn't.
We I don't know when it was, but we changed that a year or two ago to not rent the whole building, because what was happening is people were renting the small diamond kitchen and utilizing the whole building. And then we had people renting the small diamond kitchen and the large room, and then they were having arguments who had access to the kitchen. It just became a nightmare.
So you don't rent the half building?
No.
So that needs to be deleted.
Yes.
I put that in, because that was in the existing.
Well, we might check and see if that, Do you think maybe that was done and maybe they didn't get it in the online code?
I really
We
think
better
it was.
double check that. You don't think it was done?
I think it was.
Okay.
The existing online code has half building rental.
Right. Well, we have sent them all the updated stuff, but we need to
Oh.
double check and make sure there wasn't an error there on the online code.
Well, the one you have in front of you has the half building. I'm just saying,
Okay.
if you don't want it in there, you probably need to take it out.
Okay.
I didn't realize you stopped doing that. Okay. Sorry.
So
So, yeah, a little.
should that be stricken or should that
Yes.
remain in?
Yeah.
You take it out.
Well, she's recommended
I'm
that you
recom-
don't rent it that way now.
No, we don't want to rent it that way.
So we're striking which part of this here?
The $240 per day.
The $240 per day.
The
And we
second and third items?
Okay.
Right.
And I sent that in Word so they can reprint that page and you can still adopt it tonight with that change.
Okay, so what we're actually approving is everything with the exception of striking item number 2 and 3, which is basically a summary of what we have here on what's the recommendation by the city staff. This document here,
Correct.
Yeah, that's fine.
That's fine.
okay.
I
Okay,
better ask this just to make sure.
okay,
Because when it came to you last time, the top sheet, which is the recommendation, didn't have listed a couple of them, like the Rock Kitchen, the Band Shell, and Concession
They're just stay
House.
the same.
So
they're all the
they're still
same.
being rented. They're
Right.
just gonna stay the same, all right.
No change to them.
okay. These are the only ones that we've changed.
Correct.
Got it, okay. So, are we all straight?
I hope so.
Okay. All right, do I have a motion then?
I make a motion to approve the signing of ordinance number 4288, amending Appendix D with regards to rates and fees charged at the Park and Zoo with the deletion of item 2 and 3 under section 1.1.
All right, do I have a second?
A second?
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item F, consider an ordinance re-annexing lots 14 and 15 of the West Laurel Street Industrial Park into the city limits.
The commission was asked at one time to de-annex this by IEP because they thought that there were some potential for oil and gas wells on the location. And I thought they hadn't drilled any, but Chuck Gold told me they did drill one, but it was dry, so it's been plugged. And then the city entered into a lease purchase agreement to purchase the property. And so now we just need to bring it back into the city. It is part of the West Laurel Industrial Park that was platted. And so this is basically just to clean that up and bring that back into the city limits.
This is the 70 acres?
It's about
Or-
40 acres.
Oh, okay.
It's shown on that. Here's
That's
another aerial
different.
that's a little bit easier to see.
This is neighborhood
Oh,
revitalization.
okay. Okay,
Yeah, so on this
A little
map,
under
it's a little
40.
easier to see. Someone over there on North Peter Pan. It adjoins the West Laurel Industrial Park,
okay.
and it's the property that is being lease purchased from IEP.
Okay. All right. Gentlemen, any questions?
No.
All right, do I have a motion?
I move to approve an ordinance annexing lots 14 and 15 of the West Laurel Street Industrial Park into the city limits.
Do I have a second?
I second the motion.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item number 4, reports.
This was requested to be placed on the agenda by Commissioner Kaflish. This shows the neighborhood revitalization areas that we have mapped out, and we have 3 that have expired. That is the southwest, southeast, and downtown, or not downtown, sorry, central, southwest, and southeast. And we would actually we've had some requests from some residents that live in between these that would like those areas expanded. And so we would like to redraw those and expand those and make sure that we capture the corridor on Main Street as well, because there's some dilapidated housing that, could use some TLC. This might be a little bit of an incentive for them. We did want to ask, though, there is a new flood map coming out, and we would like to know if you would like us to exclude the 1% flood area from these districts, because we're not sure you want to encourage development in the flood zone. So that's something we would like to have some feedback on. And then this actually is the overlay of a map the county did for us, or actually they did it, well, they had done it, but we asked for access to it. And it identifies poor, very poor, and unsound properties. And you can see there's some properties in between where these areas do not cover that we would like to cover, because that would meet the blight definition of the statute, which is the purpose of this. And then on the left, it kind of shows for each one what the rebate amount is, depending on what is done. And it's the first 5 years it's one amount, and the next 5 years it's another amount. And it depends on if it's a new structure, rehab, alteration, or rehab of a historical structure, what the percentages were. So, and if you want to modify, what they are going forward on these 2, that would be some good direction to have as we put these plans together.
Are the structures, did they identify if they're just poor, that if work is done, it would increase the tax value? Because isn't the revitalization plan only applicable to the amount that increases the property tax? The base property tax stays the same?
Right. These are ones they went out and evaluated, and they have some kind of a rating schedule for these, and those are the ones that were in the worst condition that they mapped for us so that we could see where they were at. And so if they did some work on them, then it it could bring the value up. Now, how much it is, I don't, that's something the appraiser would have to answer.
But isn't the relief that they get is only on the increased value,
yes.
Not the whole thing?
No.
So
whatever they're currently paying, they would still pay that. And then any value that is increased, so if they put a bunch of money into it and it goes up, then they can get a rebate of that additional tax over 10 years, depending on what they did, and it may be a different amount for the first 5 years versus the next 5 years.
Right. Yes. When I was visiting with someone, they thought that everything was abated, but it just is that increase.
No,
so,
I think they usually do the base on whatever it is, like on January 1st or December 31st or one of those 2 days.
Yeah.
Whatever the value is what they use as a base. And then they have something that they've done on the last one that I think they did for the county, where it's some kind of average. So I'll need to talk to Charlotte and see what that language is, because they're concerned about somebody taking something, tearing it down, so that it's a vacant lot on whatever that date is, and then building something back. And they wanted at least the value previous to it being removed to be counted. The county had.
The base starting point, the base is a 3-year average.
Yeah, so I anticipate we'll have to put that language in there for the county to sign off.
I think it was a North Peter Pan district that the county required us to do that.
The North
or
Penn?
recommended. North Penn.
Yes.
Yeah. North Penn.
I can't remember if do you remember that it took us like 2 years to get it done, because we did it once and we had to redo it with new language, but.
Because you've got to identify every parcel, don't you?
Yes, you do. And so they had to re-identify them because it had been another year.
I think if the new floodplain map moves into these areas, that we should modify our boundaries so that we don't encourage.
So you want to exclude the new flood zone areas? Okay,
Let's see the impact
okay.
of exactly what that,
And that'll be coming to you
Floodplain.
later this year for your adoption as well. The new FEMA maps.
what are you projecting the timeline to get this all revised and put back out?
Well, it depends on that. The flood zones are not final until they've went through all this process that they're going through now. And I'm not sure if David is here. How long is it going to be before we have the new flood maps on the agenda?
Commission has to approve it by June of this year. Jeff, I think, is working on the ordinances now, and we hope to have the ordinances to you next month, Mayor. And so
Yeah.
that way they're done in plenty of time.
'Cause right now with these expired, anybody
Mm-hmm.
desiring to take advantage of it can't. And I'd hate to keep
Correct.
dragging, the readoption out.
Well, we have a copy of the proposed maps, so we know what
Yeah.
has been proposed. If that doesn't change, we can use that as a basis to start redrawing these boundaries.
My recollection
What
is BCAC did that legwork for us, with Aaron Hickman.
Yeah, they did, but now we have a tool with our pictometry and what the county has done to where I can export that data out of pictometry as long as it's not over 1,000 parcels.
Why don't we look at the preliminary floodplain and we can see how that's going to affect it. So we'll at least know the direction and the impact. Because some of the property depends how deep it is in the floodplain and how much they identify that definitely you wouldn't want to rebuild, but some might be marginal that we might not want to include it. So if we could see what they're talking about, it would at least give us a heads up.
And I talked to Trish Verdun today, and she said there was somebody wanting to do some development over by the overpass in that area, which is in the flood zone, and it was some kind of industrial project, but they said that building had never flooded. So you are going to get some concerns about that and excluding that. But that's just a decision you guys will need to make if you want to exclude those or not. But you will probably get some pushback for some of them. So,
The Penn Street overpass?
West Main, I'm sorry. Over there close to sanitation,
Right.
there's some industrial buildings.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
You're gonna redo it instead of 3 separate plans, 1 big plan?
Well,
Because that you might exceed that 1,000.
right, I'm probably gonna have to break them up just so that it won't exceed the 1,000 parcels, or otherwise have to figure out how we can maybe export it in different batches. Maybe we could do that.
Since Main Street, the south side of Main Street is a southwest area, you could just bring down the central to the north side
Yes. Yeah,
and
that,
use Main Street as a dividing line.
Last time I asked the question, we hadn't seen any great increase in development due to this. Is that still a fair statement? Hasn't been a tremendous incentive.
David, do you know how many applications we've had for this?
I just know a couple.
They would come through the building, they're usually started by the building inspector, because you have to turn in the application within so many days of your building permit application, so usually that's when they're generated. So, but then the clerk's office usually handles dealing with them, so,
I've only seen one in my time here.
So, pretty low numbers. Darn it. Thanks.
Okay. Okay, anything else on this? All right. Item B, 2018 Annual City Report.
Commissioners, you have a copy of the annual report. We have 38 slides, and I would just love to go through those if you would like me to.
I
We
actually-
talked about this, Kelly.
I actually went through this, but there's something in particular you gentlemen want her to
Actually, I just have them on here in case you guys have any questions. And we can
Any
go through
questions
the
about
slide.
a particular slide you want to stop and reminisce on?
No.
We did have some fuel increase quite a bit. The revenue generated at Memorial Hall went up quite a bit, so we did have some good increases. Also recycling, we had a big increase in recycling as well. 40% more collected in 2018 than 2017, but of course they opened up, they're doing Tuesdays now. So I think that helped that as well, so.
How did the dumpsters come out? I saw one that was overfilled, and then I saw one that didn't seem to have
Mike is
anything
here, he
in
can
it.
report on how the
Several
dumpsters
that were
went.
overflowing.
I don't know that I'm Mike's friend right now.
Mike's friend. Like you care.
We are having results. In fact, Mr. Charles Barker came in yesterday and spent quite a bit of time with me, and they're very pleased. I know he spent some time with Craig. And I think Mike will tell you there's a little bit of abuse, but we are working hard
A
to.
little bit. We're getting some tires, we're getting some paint. I mean, the paint we can take down to hazardous household waste and dispose of, but not a whole lot, but there is a little.
There is
They're
just
not monitored, so you don't get that.
so much out there. I'm overwhelmed with what's out there. I don't know. If
I saw one of them was in somebody's front yard, basically. Was that?
Yeah, what we're
On
doing
request, or-
as Taylor's out, we set them Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Mike picks them up on Monday. People that have maybe Taylor's been to you and you have a mess. We have 6 of them. They call and they say, Taylor, I'll get this cleaned up if you can get me a dumpster.
Wow.
Mike takes it over and puts it there, leaves it
Great.
till Thursday. We grab it.
And they dump them and go back out.
Sounds good to me.
So we're trying to get as much of this cleaned up as possible. So.
Fantastic.
So we really appreciate Mike. They're doing a lot of work.
A lot of shuffling.
Yeah. So
dumpsters around.
I had a comment from Joe Hernandez, and he said if Taylor had a language barrier issue, if there was some Hispanic population in the city that might have trouble understanding what this was about or have some questions about it, that he would be more than willing to help her out in any way he could if she would be willing to contact him.
that would be great. Charles Barker kind of brought that same thing to my table yesterday. I can help you with some of these people that may not want to visit with you, but let me know. And I mean, we're building that collaboration. Had a very good talk with Charles yesterday.
That's great.
Good.
So.
Good. All right. Thank you, gentlemen. Moving right along, city boards.
It's just the minutes.
Just the minutes,
And
we've
the
looked at
reason they're
that.
from December is because they had that January work session with you guys, and then they had the, so they didn't have a regular meeting until, they didn't have a February meeting, they had a regular meeting in March, and so we didn't get them approved until March, so that's why they're in your packet now.
All right. All right, moving along, item 5, city manager's comments.
I have 2 items I'd like to talk on. First, I'd like to officially introduce Lacey Lees as our new finance director. This is her first meeting as finance director. She's been to a couple of meetings before, and she still accepted the position. So we're pleased that.
So you're questioning her intelligence now, right?
No. Actually, yeah, she's already made a great impact in her first week here, and we're just pleased to have her on board officially. Secondly, just an update on the Peter Pan project. As we've been saying for several months, the letting date was March. It's now May. The letting date is May. They notified us. That's all, Mayor.
I do have one question, and I thought about it earlier today. Trainer, Vance and Andy, the bids had come in on phase 1, and I'm trying to remember, were they coming back on the meeting of the 28th?
They
for a
have
presentation,
not
or-
indicated which date. And I think the mayor raised the question about the 30 days. They actually put it 60 days in there. But I expect them either the next meeting, next meeting or the first meeting in April. But they haven't given me the firm date yet. And as you recall, they're bringing back both. They're bringing back the recommendation plus their proposal for phase 2 to their proposal to get a contract to do design for phase 2. But I'll let you know, obviously, as soon as we hear from them and they're ready to come back, we'll get them on the agenda.
All right, thank you.
Have they been working on the submission for the historic tax credits?
Yes, they have. As you know, we actually entered into a separate agreement for that, and so they are working on that.
Yeah, 'cause I think those.
They need to get that done, as you know.
Right, submitted prior to start of construction.
Right.
All right, Gary, anything?
I have none, Mr. Mayor.
All right.
Yeah, I had a request for a couple. Let's see. On the ADA items, last week I looked back at some of the requirements and just general information. The ADA is divided into two sections, Title II and Title III. Title II is what David's been working with for state and local governments. That's where we fall under, of course, and the Department of Justice has a little helpful guide, ADA update, a primer for state and local governments. And then Title III is dealing with the individual businesses, and they also have a little guideline too that's helpful, ADA primer for small businesses. Our settlement agreement was pretty extensive. I don't know if you've seen a copy of it, but it was quite elaborate. And we finally received a letter, I think it was in December of 2016, that they were no longer, they consider the matter closed, the actual settlement agreement, except in some areas. One was continued for 3 years, and there was another section, I think, continued for 6 years. But the people I had contacted was Elizabeth Savage and Michael Malazzo. He's an architect, which was funny. Was transferred to him from Elizabeth, and we're talking of some of the questions, and then I told him the impact of this ADA is pretty significant on a small town, and he asked where I was from, and I said Independence, Kansas. And typically when you say Independence, Kansas, they immediately think Independence, Missouri. So automatically I say, down by Coffeyville, the Daltons, Oklahoma. And he said, yeah, Newalla. I said, yeah, Newalla. And he said, well, there's a movie I watch about Newalla. I said, really? Yeah, that's a big celebration. He said, well, I was in Independence once. I said, really? Well, he happened to be the architect that audited our public facilities. So I thought, the chances of an 800 number and getting transferred to him was pretty unique. But there's a lot of confusion with the ADA, and I've had a lot of people ever since 2010 look at why us, what are we doing, why not everyone else. So there were still some questions that I had for him, and one of them was the curb ramps. And what Michael did, first when I talked to Elizabeth, she asked to send some pictures. So I sent him a picture of a steep incline, and according to the ADA, it says that any new work or any altered work requires curb ramp modifications, and then we're talking, he's saying, you know, the ADA for us addressed public property, public facility, public accommodation, and it's not as applicable to residential unless it goes to apartment buildings, but then it goes to the housing division. But the picture I showed him was at 5th and Birch, and he mentioned that in the ADA it talks about impracticable structures, and in it talks if there's a significant problem in a structure or also natural terrain that we don't have to put a curb ramp. And I said, well, what about access to the sidewalk? He says, no, if the person can't get up the sidewalk, then you don't need the curb ramp. And in our discussion, it's like the curb ramp is just that section that goes through the curb and beyond. So, you know, the way we've talked and looked at it, we've always considered the whole application. And coming back to clarify, it's just that section going through the curbs. Because my other question was, well, how do you make a hill compatible then? And he's, well, if it exceeds the slope, there's no way you can accomplish it. Then it goes back to the clause of impractical natural terrain. And you know, because I always wondered, like in the cities, particularly San Francisco, how you make that accessible, and that's what he had referenced too. So, you know, with the ADA, there is some leeway that says if you can't get beyond, then you don't need to do it, which really will save us a lot of money in the future if we look at the impractical solution that he stated, and he gave me the reference. It's in the information I gave you. And, you know, when we're looking at the ramps, they're only required on the new and the altered sidewalks, because it's not something that the ADA says we're mandated to make everything that's existing comply, and the residential area is excluded from the ADA. The individual houses aren't required to. So if we put a new sidewalk in a residential area, handicap ramps, unless the natural terrain makes it impractical. If we alter a street in the residential area, curb ramps are required unless they go to an area that's too steep that it's impractical. A lot of the preconditions are in the forefront and the actual requirements specified back in the various chapters. One of the things, and I mentioned earlier, like in the ravine, there's a program accessibility that allows us to provide access to the experience without requiring the modifications. The ravine is an example that through video and a place that it can be viewed, we can provide access to the program without all the massive construction to make it physically accessible. We talked about the water treatment plant also. We give tours there, well, through the same thing of making that accessible visually with a video, we can still accomplish the same without providing public handicap accessibility, because you can achieve the same experience. So there was a lot of things that came out of the conversation that comes back to the emphasis of our basic requirement is public accommodations to our buildings. That was some of the questions, like the ballpark, defining there where we got mixed use, we've got the property, but then the rec commission is providing a program that there's 2 areas of compliance there, that we only control one aspect of a program. So even if we have other buildings and facilities, we have to make the facility accessible, but the actual program, if it's by somebody else, then they have to be aware of the requirements for their program accessibility. During the ballpark discussion, I think it's confusing, like I mentioned with David, everything he's got to do to really become knowledgeable to go out and audit and distinguish all the various points. It's a lot to ask of him. It's real demanding that he know all that and still do everything else. And as a title as ADA coordinator, I see it more as organizing the input, because we're looking at areas that the switchback ramps, according to the non-accessible terrain, the impractical terrain, the natural terrain there, the curb ramp is addressing at the street and the curb, but the ramp isn't necessary because it's an exclusion of the terrain. To know all these, it's really hard to get familiar, and as we go forward spending money, it becomes more critical that we only comply with what's necessary. And just because there's a complaint doesn't necessarily mean it demands construction, because if it's not addressing a specific ADA item and within those guidelines, then we don't have to make modifications. And particularly, looking at the program access, I think that's where a consultant that specializes in ADA would really be beneficial for us as a city, and definitely aid staff in determining what actually needs to be done and what doesn't need to be done. We're asking a lot, and as the ADA modifies, there's conditions that the 2010 has made some changes, but then if you corrected the issue under the 1992, you don't have to correct it. So, that's what I want us to be aware, and then look at how we can be more, identify first, more systematic in the approach, understanding the difference between a survey, the transition plan, then is the adoption of the work, and then the corrective action comes last. I think from actually 1992 is when the audit and the surveys were required by the ADA, and in the settlement agreement, we were then to identify all of our facilities that weren't audited, and the ballpark was one of those kind of gray areas and that's why I was asking, well, who really owns it? Where's the division? Do we own the property? Do we own the fields? Well, they're building buildings. So then if they build buildings, then do we do the corrections to the building? Or just how does that division work? And in some cases, we've got it well identified, and in other cases, we don't. So, what I was seeing from the discussion that with Michael and Elizabeth, that we've really got a complicated situation that we, to manage our money, identify first the areas where we need to address. And with our walks, we've added sidewalks. Are those ramps compliant with the if they weren't compliant with the 92 edition, then we have to do them to the 2020. And then look at where we altered streets. I think we've done some of those, but, refine back down to just doing the minimum to manage our money better. And I think it's one that we really need to look at a consultant to come and do the assessments, the audits for us to help out.
Leonard, if I can interrupt you with a question.
Sure.
There are some places in town, I can't believe we spent the money we did to make them ADA, like in front of the Alf Landon home jumps to mind, where we have the switchback ramp. You're saying we don't necessarily have to do that in all cases.
No.
If the sidewalk is not ADA accessible, we don't have to make it accessible from the street.
Right. It's a definition of the curb ramp.
Right, but we've used a consultant on every one of those projects, basically.
But if you see, that's where the wording for the natural terrain is back in the front. So if you jump right to
Back in the front?
there's a preface of the ADA that goes through some introductions in general, and then you get into the chapters dealing with the specific issues.
I see.
Because some of it even says that for existing facility, if you can move the service to accommodate, so program accessibility,
Right,
instead of
right.
making every office accessible, that you can move or set up one room and then take one needing accessibility to that room and then take the service to them. But that's in the front part, that when the 92 ADA, when it came out, it was about that thick. Churches are excluded from ADA compliance. That's in the front section, that you don't see that in the back part. So, unless you're versed from the beginning and all that, then you can do things that really aren't necessary, because they're not going to tell you, no, you don't need to, unless you present the specific question. And normally you think, what I'm doing is providing access to the sidewalk. So you go beyond the curb ramp, and that's where we looked at trying to provide the access up to the sidewalk. So, in the future, we can use the natural terrain as presenting an obstacle and just address the curb ramp. But if the natural terrain is an obstacle that won't allow a wheelchair access to it, then we don't even need to put a curb ramp in, unless it's new sidewalks.
Good to know.
Okay, that is good to know.
Sounds like we spent some money we didn't need to spend, probably.
And that's the confusion of the ADA.
Yeah.
That it's really direct, because when you look through the ADA, it doesn't say streets. You've got to look at sidewalks, and that actual tie, and then you look at, well, what about the residential area? It doesn't say anything about there, but then you got to go where it describes in the introduction that we're talking about public accommodations. So it's really more of a complex interpretation than just going, I want to know about a restroom, and I look at a restroom and find the criteria there.
Yeah, if I could jump in here as well. Yeah, I think you're right, exactly. It's very complex. It can be done a lot of different ways. As you know, we wanted to have a conversation with you, and I think that's appropriate in the future, that Dave and you and I sit down and talk about these things. Dave can elaborate a little more on exactly what we're doing. We have used the consulting services of Mr. Malozzi as well. That's Dave has been in contact with him several times, and when we had questions on different issues, and so he's been a reference for us at the DOJ, as well as Dave mentioned Great Plains, and Dave can elaborate further, but.
Yep, the DOJ, they'll answer questions, but they're not going to
Yeah,
specifically
exactly.
tell you
And we
what
and David
to
can
do.
elaborate.
So that's where the consultant, and I don't know,
Well-
when we did the project originally, the ADA consultant was part of the contractor. And, well, there's a disadvantage when you bring that into the construction phase and the engineering, because he works for the engineer.
Right.
He doesn't work for you. And we need somebody working for us that tells us what we need to do, and then we can have them help monitor the construction. Because, you know, if I have a consultant and he says that I don't need to do something and I want to do it because I'm generating, or we've got a different direction to go in my mind, then that never gets to the owner. And in this, where we need to know our direction and our emphasis to take people direct to the DOJ, because, you know, unless you've versed at it all the time, there's confusion. And, you know, even from the beginning, to have somebody that's has no background in it, the learning curve, and then they've got to do everything else besides this in their job. It's a lot to task to a person to know the intricacies. Because normally looking, you say curb ramp, you look at what you're trying to accomplish instead of the pieces to make the whole. And the advantage of the consultant.
Well, I think you'd be a critical collaboration with me and Craig, and I really hope you can get some time to come in. Mr. Malosi was like, man, he said, I wish I'd known he was your commissioner. And,
He did, I told him.
Yeah, and he said, you know, I want you to come in so we can visit and look at, and so that you can see things and we can talk. I don't want to get into the discussion here. I want to visit with you, Craig and I, and talk about it. We do utilize two Sean's to help, and I use Mr. Malosi, and so it isn't just me out there. There is a plan, and I think when you come in, I can show you the documents. You know, Tony sent me quite a bit of information, which is right on. That's exactly what we have, but I don't disagree with you.
Yeah.
I'm no expert at it. The nice thing about the corner you brought in, though, as Mr. Malosi was talking to me, we have a complaint there. And that's being resolved for Robert. That's his accessible route to work.
No, that's across the street from my house.
Robert, from the sheriff's office that lives over here?
Fifth
He's going
and
to come up Fifth
Birch.
Street.
Fifth and Birch is what I sent him.
Oh, I thought you said you sent him Fifth and Locust.
Birch.
Oh, okay.
I did send him that where the handicap
Yeah,
ramp is
yeah.
because.
But I agree with you. Tony actually stopped switchbacks. Sean Turner told me this because of their excessive costs. I don't know if you remember that, Tony. We put a stop to them because of that.
When we stopped that, we were going to start looking.
Yeah.
There was a block that needed one here, because I think that one at the moving tree was almost $40,000.
Yeah.
So we was gonna start looking, or JJ was maybe it'd be cheaper replacing the whole sidewalk of the whole block. You know, coming up with, you know,
Right.
12 foot, then a landing, and then you could work back like that, just a regular ramp. But,
Yeah.
we knew about that.
So we're away from it. But I agree with you, Leonard. I'm not, Craig and I think we don't
Yeah.
disagree with, but really would like you to come in and.
Sure, I was
sit
going to
down
come
and-
in
I know you've been
yesterday,
tied
but
up
my
this week.
son,
Yeah,
my son was coming to town.
Totally
and
understand.
Got delayed.
And I'd like you to look at everything, and I know you've been doing it a long time, and I don't know that we disagree that we may need some, but that's I appreciate it.
Yeah,
I mean,
well, you know, the way, and what I saw with confusion is we got a transition plan, but you haven't identified the individual pieces. And even with Trans-Systems on the downtown,
Yeah.
they did a map with identifying the
Right.
spots, which that
And
was very simple.
we have some
from
difficult
what
questions
we did.
coming to you guys very soon downtown, and so I mean, I think it'd be a better place for us where we can just talk in Craig's office and put some things out there.
Yeah, that's fine, but,
Yeah.
you know, that's why I see when we talk about it, the confusion keeps getting, continuing on.
Right.
That even, you know, with Gary's facility we talked about last week,
Yeah.
you know, it's clear, Title II, Title III, the dividing line is at the property line.
Yeah.
And so how do we solve that? We need somebody that's versed all the time in ADA,
Right, yeah.
that you can coordinate
Yeah.
and not do the audits. Because, you know, when we look at beginning with the audits, that justifies the individual items justify the transition plan, which justifies
Right, yeah.
the corrective action.
Yeah.
And to do the corrective action, you don't understand the initial problem of how to develop it to get to the transition plan. And the transition plan sets the future. You know, the only thing that DOJ looks at, does it comply?
Exactly.
And
Who pays? He doesn't care as long as it complies.
No,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
yeah,
so you're exactly right. And that is the key ultimately to a transition plan, because that as staff, that is what I'm following, is that 2017 plan, and that had that caveat in there. But you guys have the option to make those decisions, and you made that decision. That's fine. I mean, that's what you guys get paid the big bucks to make. And you know, we'll move forward. We know going forward that isn't an option downtown that you guys want to do, and that's great.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand that. It's just part of business going
Yeah.
forward.
and it's a definition back to ramp and curb
Right,
ramp, you
yeah.
know, from you looking at the transitional plan for downtown, understanding that if a business has access on a ground level and we tear the sidewalk out, yes, we have to make it
Right.
ground level. But if it's got steps, then
Right.
it was to comply in 92.
Yeah.
So,
It's complicated.
yeah, it's complicated, and
Yeah.
that's what I think we need to understand as a commission, the complexity of it, that we can see that we make it as easy for the staff as possible. And, you know, if you're going to be a paramedic, you got to keep up with your paramedic license. If you're going to be building code, well, then you need to research building code. Now, if you're ADA inspector and surveyor, now you've got to know all the conditions of the ADA.
Yeah, that's what's
And-
so important about this trans. That's what we use when we build our capital and come to you guys out of this plan. I mean, that's how all the projects we are doing is exactly out of this timeline back here out of the 2017 plan. That's where we're getting our ADA projects. And you've looked at it, you
Yeah.
know, you can see where we're following.
But the particular details is where,
Yeah, and I understand that, and, you know, I understand.
because then the question, you know, you look at, we've got a contractor that's got the ADA consultant with them, then why didn't that consultant bring it to us, the clause in the 92 ADA that had the natural terrain? So then, you know, see, that's why I said we need the consultant working for us, that they can do that and save us, because when you get the consultant in the other pocket, then you lose some one-on-one representation.
Yeah.
And, you know, it goes on with even construction, when you get into the civil side, and even construction for us, when it's a building, if it's a design-build package, you don't have the eyes looking for you. Those eyes work for the
Yeah.
one that we're paying,
Yeah.
so it's hard to get that protection, so.
Well, I think I mean, we appreciate, I mean, would enjoy you coming in and looking
Yeah,
at what we're doing, giving us some good,
Yeah.
and I think that'll help when we bring it to
Yeah.
you guys. So.
Yesterday, just didn't work.
It's crazy. Our schedule's crazy too.
Yeah, my son was supposed to be in at noon, then 3 o'clock, then 5 o'clock, then it was 9:30, and
Close.
I felt like he was passing through. He's priority.
Yeah.
There have been times that they grew up too quick that they weren't priority, so
Yeah. Well,
now I learned they
well,
become priority.
we know how short life
Yeah.
really is, and family
Yeah.
is priority. So.
So, but that was my my thought on trying to just explain how complex of what we're up against in dealing with the ADA, and it's a different creature, that it's not a code, it is law, and there is fines that can come with it and assessments. So that was what I wanted to bring forth, and really look at how we get our representation through the audit, the survey, then the transition plan. So the other item, I know we've talked about our procurement policy. We've talked a long time. I think we need a temporary procurement policy if we're not going to get one quickly. I hated what happened the 28th, but that's something that we should know with the appropriation. We need, I think, as commissioners, input on the appropriations too, but I think it's something we have to move on, either set a temporary policy and some procurements, or get that schedule moved up.
Yeah, to that point, we have drafted a procurement policy and other financial policies, and they're still drafted. I purposely held the procurement until the new finance director came on. I wanted to make sure we're all comfortable with that and tweak it finally before we bring it to the commission for your approval. Right, it's a 14-page document. We're going through it, and Lacey's going through it now, and then we'll finalize that. So that'll be very, I would say the 28th, but probably the meeting after that. But we've been operating under the unwritten policies, if you will. The city has for the last 100 years or whatever it is. We've been continuing to operate under those unwritten policies and guidelines that, like when we've been before, when I'd say, what's the policy? Well, this is the way we've done it, and so, but we'll get that to you ASAP. I purposely kind of slowed that down to wait for our new finance director.
Well, there's issues with that unwritten policy of change order approval that affect our projects, contracts,
No question.
approving payment for
Getting
capital.
something written will clarify everything, because sometimes unwritten, you may be done in the past, and it could change maybe from project to project. So, no question, we'll have that to you as soon as possible.
Well, why, if it's in draft form already, then why can't we as commissioners have the draft to start reviewing? Because if we see some input,
That's
policy and
that's-
procedures.
That's
is-
why we'll bring it to you to do that, but we don't feel comfortable yet doing that with five. We want to get it as ready as possible for your draft. So we'll get that to you ahead of time, obviously, before we bring it. We'll get it to you to review and before the meeting, and when we'll talk about it. But
I'm thinking of reviewing it more than just a week. And that's what it just drags out longer. That, I think there's things we need to look at, and If it's draft, yeah, you can add to it, you can change it, but it gives us time to peruse through and see what others have done, what others are considering. I know just are we looking at block grant requirements too, what they specify, or where are we? Have no idea. I think it's probably been 4 years ago when we brought up procurement policy, and here, we're operating under an unknown that, we don't know what that unknown procurement policy is. And it's hard when you go through appropriations and try and figure out what this is and whether it should be applicable or not. And if you have the procurement policy, it sure makes things easier.
No question. And like I say, when we're comfortable with it, we'll get it to you.
I'm looking at it. I am looking at it now, so it will be soon. I have it, and I just wanted the time to look over it first when I come in the door, that you don't have something that I've never seen before either, in case I have big changes.
I still think with a draft policy, it's up to you guys, but I think if it's draft, then it's ready for us to look at it. We're not finalizing.
It seems to be a lot of times when we're getting a document from the city, it's something that they've already worked on and completed, and then we're getting it either up before the meeting or during the meeting, and then we actually don't have a chance to look at it until after the meeting is already over, and we have time to go through it. And that seems to happen on somewhat of a regular basis. It would be nice if we had this information well ahead of time.
And we will give that to you. I mean, that's our responsibility as staff, is to prepare a professional document, a professional policy that's complete. We call it draft because you haven't approved it yet. But we want to get it in final form as best as we can see it. I mean, that's our job, to do that. And then we'll give it to you, and you'll have time. It's 14 pages. It's not,
Right.
60 pages, but it's 14 pages but right now it's 14 pages. I don't think it'll change, but that's our role. That's our job, is to prepare a document. I mean, we could have, we're on like third or fourth draft, and you could say, well, first draft we should have sent to you. No, we want to get it as required by us as staff in a final form that we can recommend. And that's what we want to recommend, a final draft. And we'll get that to you. Like I say, we're there. So.
And then if we have modifications, so we're suggesting it goes back.
It's up to you. Yeah, you can, like I say, it's what we're recommending, but then you can obviously modify it. You can change it. There's certain, again, it's a policy document in there. There's certain things like spending authority for department heads, city manager, and so forth, that are laid out in there, and you can certainly change them. Again, you're adopting the policy for the city of Independence and our procurement, and like I say, we've gone through several drafts, and we'll get the one we can recommend. We will get to you very quickly.
Well, it's still my opinion, if it's draft, then the commission could look at it and be a little update.
Why don't you tell the staff how far in advance of the meeting you want it, and make sure they get it to you that far in advance of the meeting. I'm a professional. I draft stuff every day. You're a professional. I don't feel comfortable giving rough drafts stuff sometimes, and I think that's what you're hearing right now. So I don't know what the issue is.
Well, I just don't want it where I don't want to see what happened with Gary's ramp happen again.
The good thing out of that is almost switchback things that when they were going up, everybody thought those were crazy. But turns out now maybe we didn't have to do that, if that's what you're saying. I don't know.
Well, okay, here's my take. When you, maybe if a compromise would be to set how many days or weeks in advance we want to see this. As far as we see that document, to us, it's still a draft because we've not had a chance to look at it or make any modifications or changes on it. So even though this is what you consider a final product,
No, I didn't say
or
that.
not a final product, but I mean, you've got it to a point to where it's for us
It's
to.
what we recommend,
What you're recommending.
our final recommendation.
But at that point, to us, it's still
Exactly.
a draft to us.
We're recommending
Because you're recommending
this
this,
draft
and we can
policy
choose to
for-
modify it, go along with it, make
Right.
changes that we need to do
Right.
with it.
So, I mean, if we come to the first meeting in April, we'll have it to you 2 weeks before that. That's acceptable.
Gary? What do you think? I mean, I put my 2 cents in.
Yeah, I don't think we need to beat it to death. I've spent my whole career as a consultant, and when I send a report to one of my clients, it's a draft until they accept it. But I certainly don't want to send them something I'm not proud of, and I don't want our city staff sending us something they're not proud of. And it's, when they send it to us, then it's available to the public too. So let's make sure it's clean and ready to be read by others. So, but I certainly would like to have plenty of time to look at it myself also and make suggestions, and revisions.
So would I. Would that be agreeable,
Yeah.
gentlemen?
2 weeks is fine, I
weeks.
just don't want it to keep dragging
Right.
on and on and on.
Right.
And I
2
don't
days
either. I
before the
mean, it's
meeting.
been one of my, obviously, goals since the 2016 audit, obviously. But then it did slow down through the process because I wanted to specifically wait for the new finance director for that reason. So that's why it's dragged down, but we'll be there.
All right. Yeah, and I concur with what Leonard said. What happened, Gary, that should have never come up. And like I said, I don't want to see anyone put in that position again. That was just, it was not good. All right, so we're looking at, we've settled that particular issue. So next on the list, we are looking at going into, are there any public concerns? I got a little ahead of myself. Anyone? Nobody? All right, now we are going into an executive session. I move that we recess for an executive session for discussion of possible acquisition of real estate for city and public purposes pursuant to the preliminary discussion on acquisition of real estate, exception KSA 75-4319B6. And for how many minutes?
5 minutes. Do we have to, I don't know do we have to go in and come out for each one, or do we?
Mhm.
Okay, then it's 5 minutes for first.
Okay, so it's, 7:40 now?
Yeah.
We will resume at 7:45. All right, do I have a motion to go into executive session?
You made the motion.
Or I
I'll
made the
second.
motion, excuse me, second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
There we go. Okay. We are back in session. And I move to authorize a certification by the local public authority to the Kansas Department of Transportation of real property acquisition procedures, right-of-way clearance, utility arrangements, and other matters in the amount of $9,200 for the North Peter Pan Road improvements. Do I have a second?
I second it.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Now we are going back into executive session. I move that we recess for an executive session for discussion of an employee's performance pursuant to the non-elected personnel exception, KSA 75-4319B1. And we were looking at how many minutes here? 20. And David, what time do you have?
8:05 maybe?
7:45.
7:45?
So 8:05.
7:46.
Okay, so in 20 minutes,
8:06.
8:06.
Okay.
All right, we'll, do I have a motion to go into executive? I have made the motion. Do I have a second? Excuse me.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Here we go. And we'd like to go back out in session again for an additional 10 minutes, which would make that
8:16.
8:16. So now I go through with another, do I have a second?
I second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 So we're back at 8:16?
Yes.
Okay.
The first one, did you second the first one? One and second.
Okay, we are back in session, and there was no action taken on that. But I would like to move that we recess for an executive session for discussion of an employee's performance pursuant to the non-elected personnel exemption, KSA 75-4319B1, and be the commissioners and Jeff Chubb. And probably 15 minutes, and that will make that, what time?
8:33.
8:33? Okay, do I have a motion?
You made the motion.
I made the motion. I have a second. I'm sorry. I've been confused all night.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. And that was 8:30. Okay. We are back in session. No action was taken, and we are ready for adjournment. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you. Thank you for this information.